The slap echoed through the marble fitting room only seconds before the first bullet shattered the mirror. Madeline Cruz did not scream. She stumbled backward, one hand rising to her burning cheek, while the other still held the silver sewing needle she had been using to repair the final bead along the wedding gown. Across from her, Vivienne Moreau stood in a storm of white silk and diamonds. The wedding dress surrounded her like frozen smoke. Its long train spilled across the polished floor. Hundreds of hand-sewn crystals caught the candlelight. The gown had taken Madeline nearly 4 months to create. Vivienne stared at her as though she wanted to tear the dress apart with her bare hands. "You ruined it." Madeline tasted blood where her teeth had caught the inside of her lip. She forced herself to remain upright. "The damage was repaired before you arrived." Vivienne stepped closer. "Do not lie to me." "I am not lying." Madeline lowered her needle. "Someone cut through the inner lining last night. The blade marks were hidden beneath the lace. I stayed here until sunrise repairing them." Vivienne looked toward the doorway. Luca stood there. He had entered so silently that nobody had noticed him. Luca DeSantis did not need to raise his voice to command a room. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and dressed in a black suit that seemed to absorb the candlelight. A pale scar crossed one side of his right hand. His expression revealed nothing. 2 armed men stood behind him. Everyone in Chicago knew his name. Judges avoided saying it in public. Business owners lowered their eyes when his vehicles passed. Men who had threatened him had vanished before they could apologize. Madeline had spent months working inside his mansion. Yet she had never been alone with him. She had never seen him angry either. That frightened her more than the gun at his side. Vivienne recovered quickly. She turned toward him with tears already shining in her eyes. "Luca, this woman nearly destroyed our wedding gown. She has been careless from the beginning. I warned you that hiring someone like her would embarrass us." Someone like her. Madeline had heard those words in different forms her entire life. Too large to model her own designs. Too ordinary to enter luxury boutiques. Too noticeable when people wanted her invisible. She had learned to survive by letting insults pass through her without leaving scars. The slap was different. Luca entered the room and closed the door behind him. "What happened to the gown?" His voice was quiet. Vivienne pointed toward the hem. "She damaged the lining and tried to hide it." Luca looked at Madeline. "Did you damage it?" "No." Madeline kept her chin raised. "When I returned last night, 3 sections of the inner lining had been cut. Several support stitches were removed. If Vivienne had worn the gown without repairs, the train could have separated while she walked down the aisle." Luca moved toward the gown. Vivienne reached for his arm. "Do not listen to her." He stopped before she touched him. The warning in his eyes made her hand fall. Madeline watched him kneel beside the train. He examined the repaired seam with unexpected care, tracing the line without touching the delicate thread. "How long did this take?" "Almost 11 hours. "Did anyone help you?" "No." "Why did you not report the damage?" "Vivienne had already threatened to replace my entire staff if the gown was not finished this morning." A flicker of movement passed through his eyes. It disappeared so quickly that Madeline wondered whether she had imagined it. Luca stood. "Show me where the fabric was cut." Madeline stepped forward. Vivienne moved between them. "This is ridiculous. She is a seamstress. She works for us. You do not question me because of someone like her." The room became silent. Luca looked at the red mark spreading across Madeline's cheek. Then he looked at Vivienne. "Did you strike her?" Vivienne gave a short laugh. She needed to understand what was at stake. Luca did not move. Madeline felt something dangerous settle over the room. It was not anger in the ordinary sense. It was colder, more deliberate. Luca turned toward one of his guards. "Bring me the marriage contract." Vivienne stared at him. "What are you doing?" The guard disappeared into the corridor. Luca continued looking at Vivienne. "You will apologize." Her face hardened. "To her, now." Vivian looked at Madeline with open disgust. I will do no such thing. The guard returned, carrying a black leather folder. Luca took it. The contract inside had been negotiated between the DeSantis and Moreau families for nearly a year. It controlled shipping routes, properties, political alliances, and enough money to purchase half the lakefront. Luca removed the papers. Vivienne became pale. You are not serious. Luca tore the contract in half. The sound was soft. It still felt louder than the slap. Then he tore it again. And again. White pieces fell across the train of the wedding gown like snow. The wedding is canceled. Vivienne stared at him. Our families will go to war. Then tell your father to prepare. Luca dropped the final piece of paper. You stopped being my fiancée the moment you placed your hand on someone who could not strike you back without losing everything. Madeline forgot to breathe. Vivienne looked from Luca to Madeline. Understanding twisted her beautiful face. You are choosing her? Luca glanced at Madeline. His gaze remained unreadable. I am rejecting you. The first bullet came through the mirror. Glass exploded across the room. Luca reached Madeline before she understood what was happening. His arm locked around her waist. He pulled her to the floor and covered her body with his own as a second shot tore through the wall. The candles fell. The room plunged into smoke and darkness. Men shouted in the corridor. Madeline felt the hard line of a weapon beneath Luca's jacket. She felt his breath near her temple. His body shielded every part of hers. Stay down. Another bullet struck the marble. Luca lifted his head and fired once toward the broken window. A shadow vanished beyond the balcony. His guards rushed past them. Vivienne crouched behind a sofa, screaming at everyone to protect her. Luca did not look at her. He kept one hand behind Madeline's head until the gunfire stopped. Then he noticed something beneath the torn lining of the wedding gown. A narrow strip of yellow paper had slipped from the fabric. Numbers were written across it in dark ink. Luca's expression changed. For the first time, Madeline saw fear enter the eyes of the most feared man in Chicago. Not fear for himself. Fear of what the paper meant. He released Madeline and picked it up. Vivienne stopped screaming. Her silence told Madeline more than any confession could have. Luca folded the paper into his palm. Seal the mansion. His voice cut through the chaos. Nobody leaves. Vivienne rose slowly. Luca. Let me explain. He looked at her. You will have your opportunity. Then he turned to Madeline. You are coming with me. Madeline pushed herself to her feet. I am going home. The person outside that window was not shooting at me. Luca looked toward the damaged gown. They were shooting at the woman who found what was hidden inside it. I did not find anything. They do not know that. He removed his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. Madeline almost refused it. Then another crash sounded somewhere below. Luca closed the jacket around her with one firm hand. You can hate me after you survived tonight. 3 days earlier. Madeline had believed her greatest problem was finishing a wedding gown for a woman who despised her. She had been wrong. Her ordinary life existed inside a narrow brick shop on the west side of Chicago. Cruz's bridal alterations had belonged to her mother before illness forced Lena Cruz to stop working. The shop was small, but every wall carried evidence of the women who had trusted them. Photographs of brides covered the front counter. Some wore expensive gowns. Others wore dresses created from fabric their mothers had saved for years. Madeline treated every gown with the same care. She believed clothing remembered what happened inside it. A wedding dress remembered trembling hands, whispered promises. And the moment a woman decided to step toward a future she could not yet see. That belief had made Madeline one of the most gifted seamstresses in the city. It had not made her wealthy. Medical bills consumed most of the shop income. The roof leaked during heavy rain. The heating system worked only when Madeline kicked the metal pipe beside the boiler. Still, the shop was hers. Inside it, Nobody looked at her body before looking at her work. That changed when Vivienne Moreau entered. Vivienne had arrived with photographers, assistants, security guards, and a wedding planner who carried 3 phones. She looked around the shop as though she had entered a storage room. Madeleine had expected the Moreau family to choose a famous European designer. Instead, Vivienne placed an old photograph on the counter. The photograph showed a wedding dress created by Madeleine's grandmother. "My mother wore this." Vivienne spoke without warmth. "I want something inspired by it. I also want it to look nothing like it." Madeleine studied the photograph. The original gown used hand-cut lace that no manufacturer produced anymore. It would require months of work. Vivienne named a price large enough to save the shop. Madeleine accepted. She did not know Luca had selected her. During the first fitting at the DeSantis mansion, Madeleine saw him standing on an upper balcony. He was speaking to a man with silver hair, while armed guards watched every entrance. Luca looked down. His gaze found Madeleine immediately. She wore a simple, dark blue dress and carried 3 garment bags across her arms, beside Vivienne and her models. Madeleine felt painfully visible. Luca studied her for several seconds. Then he walked away. Vivienne noticed. That was when the cruelty began. At first, the insults were quiet. Vivienne complained that Madeleine's hands were too warm against the fabric. She ordered Madeleine to remain behind curtains when guests entered. She demanded fittings at midnight and accused Madeleine of laziness when traffic delayed her by 10 minutes. During one fitting, Vivienne stood before a mirror while Madeleine adjusted the waist. "It must be difficult to spend your life creating dresses you could never wear." Madeleine met her eyes in the reflection. "I can wear anything I make." Vivienne smiled. Confidence is charming when it is supported by reality. Madeleine continued pinning the fabric. Reality is usually more flexible than people think. Luca entered at that moment. Vivienne immediately became softer. She turned toward him and displayed the gown. "What do you think?" Luca did not look at the dress first. He looked at Madeleine. A pin had caught her finger. A small red mark appeared near her thumb. Madeleine hid her hand behind the fabric. "Luca," attention moved to the gown. "It looks expensive." Vivienne laughed. "That is not romantic." "Our marriage is not romantic." He said it calmly. Vivienne's smile disappeared. Madeleine lowered her head, pretending to focus on the hem. She felt Luca watching her. After the fitting, he stopped her in the corridor. "Madeleine Cruz." She turned. He stood alone beneath a row of gold wall lamps. From a distance, Luca looked elegant. Up close, he looked dangerous. His stillness was too complete. His eyes missed nothing. "Did Vivienne choose you?" Madeleine adjusted the garment bag on her shoulder. She said she did. "That was not my question." Madeleine waited. Luca stepped closer. "Did she find your shop herself?" "No. Her wedding planner contacted me." He nodded as though confirming something. "Why does it matter?" "Because I gave your name to the planner." Madeleine stared at him. "Why?" "My mother kept the dress your grandmother made for her. I repaired that dress 5 years ago." "I know." The answer unsettled her. "You investigated me. I investigate everyone who enters my home. At least you admit it. Most people are not brave enough to accuse me of dishonesty. Most people are probably trying to leave the conversation alive." Something almost like amusement touched his face. It vanished. "If Vivienne caused difficulty, tell my house manager." Madeleine held his gaze. "Will your house manager stop her from humiliating people?" "No." Then telling him would only give her another reason to do it. Luca's eyes narrowed. "You allow it. I endure it because my employees need their salaries and my mother needs treatment. That is not the same as allowing it." For several seconds, neither of them moved. The silence felt more intimate than conversation. Luca looked at her hand. The small pin wound was still visible. "You are bleeding." "I will survive." His gaze returned to her face. That is not always something you can decide. Madeline left before he could see how deeply those words disturbed her. Now she sat inside the rear seat of Luca's armored vehicle, while Chicago disappeared behind rain-streaked windows. His jacket remained around her shoulders. Across from her, Luca studied the paper recovered from the gown. His men occupied 2 black vehicles ahead and 3 behind. Madeline had never seen so many weapons in one place. She pressed her fingers against her cheek. The swelling had begun. Luca noticed. He reached toward her, then stopped before touching her. Madeline looked at his hand. "Why did you stop?" His fingers curled. "Because you did not give me permission." The answer surprised her. He lowered his hand. Who had access to the gown last night? Vivienne. Her friend, Bianca. 2 assistants. The wedding planner. Several guards. And you. Madeline turned toward the window. There it is. What? The accusation? I did not accuse you. You put me in an armored vehicle, surrounded me with armed men, and asked whether I had access to hidden evidence. You did not need to use the word. Luca leaned back. The paper contains shipping numbers used by the Moreau family. What was it doing inside a wedding dress? That is what I intend to discover. And until then, you remain where I can protect you. Madeline looked at him. You mean control me? His expression hardened. There is a difference. Powerful men usually believe that. The vehicle stopped beneath a private tower overlooking the river. Luca exited first. Madeline remained seated. He looked back at her. Are you planning to sleep in the car? I am planning to return to my shop. Your shop is already being secured. Her stomach tightened. You sent men there. I sent men to make sure it was not burning. Madeline stepped out. You cannot enter my business without permission. A shooter entered my home and fired at you because of something sewn into a gown from your shop. That does not make my life yours. No. Luca moved closer. It makes your survival my responsibility. I never gave you that responsibility. He looked down at her with that terrible stillness. You did not have to. The private elevator carried them to the top floor. The penthouse was beautiful in a way that felt lonely. Dark windows overlooked the river. Black stone covered the floors. Every piece of furniture appeared selected for function rather than comfort. There were no family photographs, no personal objects, only a grand piano that looked untouched. A doctor examined Madeline's cheek while Luca spoke to his security team across the room. Madeline listened. The shooter had escaped across neighboring rooftops. One guard had been injured. Vivienne and her entourage remained inside the mansion. But Bianca had disappeared shortly before the attack. When the doctor finished, Luca approached. You need rest. I need my phone. He handed it to her. There were 17 missed calls. Madeline called her mother first. Elena was safe with Madeline's assistant Sophia. Luca men had moved them to a guarded apartment after someone broke the rear window of the shop. Madeline closed her eyes. Luca watched her. Was anything taken? No. Her mother sounded frightened, but unharmed. Madeline ended the call. You moved my mother without asking me. She agreed, because armed strangers told her someone might kill her daughter. Luca's jaw tightened. What would you have preferred? A choice. There was no time. There is never time when powerful men want obedience. Madeline stood. Luca stepped into her path. Where are you going, home? No. Move. No. The word was quiet and absolute. Madeline felt fear move through her. She refused to lower her eyes. You canceled a marriage because Vivienne treated me as though I had no dignity. Do not make the mistake of believing that gives you permission to take the dignity she tried to destroy. Something shifted in his face. For 1 second, he looked less like a mafia boss and more like a man confronted by a truth he did not want. He stepped aside. Madeline walked toward the elevator. The doors did not open. She pressed the button again. Nothing happened. She turned. Luca had not moved. You stepped aside for a locked elevator. His eyes almost warmed. I said I would not stand in your way. You are impossible. So I have been told. Madeline should have hated him. Part of her did. Another part remembered his body covering hers while glass fell around them. That part was more dangerous than any weapon in the penthouse. She spent the night in a guest room with a guard outside the door. She did not sleep. At 2 in the morning, she entered the kitchen and found Luca standing near the windows with a glass of water. He had removed his jacket and tie. The sleeves of his white shirt were rolled to his elbows. A dark bruise marked one forearm where flying marble had struck him. You should have that examined. Madeline's words surprised both of them. It is nothing. That is what people say when they do not want anyone to notice they are hurt. Luca studied her. Is that what you say? Usually. Rain moved across the glass behind him. Madeline opened a cupboard and found it empty. Do you not keep food here? I rarely stay here. She opened another cupboard, also empty. Where do you stay? Where I am needed. That sounds exhausting. It is efficient. Madeline found coffee in a drawer. Do you have a machine? Luca pointed toward a silver device built into the wall. It looked more complicated than the security system at her shop. Madeline stared at it. Luca pressed 2 buttons. The machine began making coffee. She looked at him. A man feared across Chicago. Defeated only by ordinary human conversation. I am not defeated. You are standing in a kitchen at 2 in the morning, explaining a coffee machine to a hostage. You are not a hostage. The elevator is locked. A protected guest. That sounds like something a kidnapper would say after purchasing expensive sheets. Luca looked down at his water. Then Madeline heard it. A quiet laugh. It lasted less than a second. It transformed his face. She forgot he was dangerous. That was her first serious mistake. The next morning, Luca brought the wedding gown to the penthouse. It arrived inside a sealed garment case guarded by 4 men. Madeline looked at it. I am not finishing that gown. You are not finishing it. Luca placed the yellow paper on a table. I need you to show me exactly where this was hidden. Madeline opened the case. The gown looked wounded. Glass had cut the veil. A bullet had passed through one layer of the train. Pieces of the torn marriage contract still clung to the silk. She lifted the inner lining. The paper had been concealed between 2 strips of boning near the waist. Whoever placed it there had opened one of Madeline's original seams and closed it using black silk thread. Madeline always used ivory thread inside bridal gowns. She showed Luca. This was done after the 2nd fitting. How can you know? The black thread passes through stitches. I added that afternoon. Luca leaned closer. His shoulder almost touched hers. Madeline became aware of his body beside her. His warmth, his silence, the faint scent of cedar on his shirt. She shifted away. He noticed. He said nothing. Madeline examined the damaged sections. The cuts were not random. Someone had opened 3 areas where the paper might have been hidden. They were searching for it. Bianca. Luca placed both hands on the table. She disappeared before the shooting. She also carried a black silk emergency kit at every fitting. Madeline pointed toward a tiny crystal caught beneath the seam. It was shaped like a blue flower. Bianca had worn matching crystal pins in her hair. Luca removed his phone and called his men. Find Bianca Rinaldi. He ended the call. Madeline continued inspecting the gown. A faded mark appeared on the hidden paper. She held it toward the window. It looked like part of a circular seal. Luca went still. You recognize it. He took the paper. The seal belonged to a shipping office controlled by his younger brother, Matteo, before he died. Madeline lowered the gown. How did he die? An ambush near the harbor. Luca's voice became colder. The Moreau family claimed a rival crew attacked him. You did not believe them. Matteo contacted me before he died. He said he had discovered proof that someone inside our alliance was redirecting weapons through our ports. Luca looked at the paper. The proof disappeared with him. And you believe Vivian family was involved? I knew they were involved. Then why were you marrying her? The question remained between them. Luca walked toward the window. Because enemies become careless when they believe they have won. Madeline understood. The engagement was a trap. The wedding gave me access to Moreau accounts, properties, and private communications. I intended to identify everyone connected to the betrayal before ending the alliance. Madeline looked at the ruined gown. Did Vivian know? I do not know. You were going to marry a woman you suspected of helping murder your brother. I was going to stand beside her long enough to make her family reveal the truth. And afterward, there would have been no afterward. The emptiness in his voice disturbed her. Madeline thought of the untouched piano and the empty cupboards. Luca had built his entire life around surviving long enough to punish the people responsible for his brother. He had not planned anything beyond revenge. The realization should have made him less frightening. Instead, it made him feel more dangerous. A man with nothing to lose could destroy an entire city without regretting the ashes. Luca turned back. You should not pity me. I do not. Good. I think you are so committed to your pain that you no longer know who you are without it. His eyes darkened. Most people learn not to speak to me that way. Most people want something from you. And you do not. I want my shop repaired. I want my mother safe. I want to leave this place without being followed. Those things require my protection. There is always a price for protection from men like you. His gaze held hers. I have not asked you to pay one. Not yet. That afternoon, news of the canceled wedding spread across Chicago. Photographs appeared online showing Luca Mansion surrounded by police vehicles and black SUVs. Reporters gathered outside the Moreau estate. Someone leaked Madeline's name. By sunset, headlines called her Luca secret lover. One article described her as an ambitious seamstress who had seduced a powerful client. Another published an old photograph of Madeline carrying fabric outside her shop. The comments beneath it were crueler than anything Vivian had said. Madeline read 3 before closing her phone. Luca took the device from her hand. Do not read them. Give that back. He placed it on the table. People will believe whatever provides the simplest explanation. The simplest explanation is that a woman who looks like Vivian could only lose a man because another woman manipulated him. Luca looked at her. Vivian Beauty did not hide what she was. It hid it from you long enough to plan a wedding. His jaw tightened. Madeline regretted the words, but she did not apologize. Luca picked up the phone and handed it back. I have arranged a statement. What does it say? That the wedding ended because of private disagreements between our families. Your name will not be mentioned. That will not stop them. No. Then what will fear? Madeline searched his face. What are you planning? Nothing you need to see. She moved closer. Do not hurt someone because they insulted me. They endangered you. Words are not bullets. Words tell dangerous people which target the public will accept. His calm frightened her more than shouting would have. Madeline placed her hand over his wrist. Luca became completely still. It was the first time she had touched him. She felt his pulse beneath her fingers. Fast. Much faster than his expression suggested. Do not turn me into an excuse for violence. His gaze dropped to her hand. Then it rose to her face. You believe I need an excuse? No. That is why I am asking. For several seconds, the city seemed to disappear beyond the windows. Luca lifted his free hand. His fingers almost touched the bruise on her cheek. He stopped less than an inch away. Madeline's breath caught. Why do you keep stopping? Because when I touch something, I have difficulty letting it go. The words were quiet. They carried no flirtation, only warning. Madeline slowly removed her hand from his wrist. Luca stepped away first. 2 days passed. Madeline was allowed to move through the penthouse, but not to leave the building. Luca had a complete sewing studio installed in an unused room. Industrial machines appeared beside bolts of fabric from her shop. Her personal scissors rested on a polished table. Madeline found him in the doorway while she examined everything. "You moved half my shop here. You were becoming restless. You could unlock the elevator. That would make my security team restless." She picked up a pair of scissors. "Am I supposed to be grateful?" "No." "Then why do this?" Luca looked around the room. "Because your hands shake when they have nothing to repair." Madeline lowered the scissors. He had noticed. She disliked how much that mattered. She began restoring the damaged wedding gown because she needed to understand what had happened to it. She removed every section of black thread beneath one seam. She discovered a second piece of paper no larger than her fingernail. It contained a date, the wedding date. Beside it was a number corresponding to a warehouse owned by Luca family. Luca arrived as she placed the pieces together. There was going to be an attack during the wedding. He read the numbers. "The warehouse stores emergency weapons used by my security teams." Madeline felt cold. If the warehouse was emptied before the ceremony, your men would have been unarmed. Not unarmed. Delayed. Long enough for someone to kill you. Luca looked toward the city, or long enough to remove me and blame the Moreau rivals. The engagement had never been merely a political alliance. It had been an execution plan. Vivian intended to become Luca's widow before the wedding night ended. Luca called his captain, Marco Valenti. Marco arrived 20 minutes later. He was the silver-haired man Madeline had seen with Luca during her first fitting. He had served the DeSantis family for more than 20 years. His voice carried the calm authority of someone trusted completely. He examined the papers. This could be false evidence. Luca watched him. Why would Bianca hide false evidence in the gown to make us turn against the Moreau family? Madeline noticed something in Marco's expression. Not fear. Recognition. He knew the style of handwriting. She walked toward the table and moved the larger piece closer to him. "Have you seen these numbers before?" Marco looked at her. "I have seen thousands of shipping documents." "You looked at the final 3 numbers before you looked at the seal." His face remained neutral. "What are you suggesting?" Madeline felt Luca's attention sharpen behind her. "Those final numbers identify something specific." Marco gave a faint smile. "You have an impressive imagination." "She is correct." Luca's voice changed. Marco turned. Luca stood near the window with his gun in his hand. The final numbers identified the private security rotation at the warehouse. Only 3 men knew it. Luca raised the weapon. "I was one of them." Marco did not move. "Your father was another. He is dead." Luca's eyes became colder. "That leaves you." The penthouse doors opened. 2 guards entered. Marco slowly lifted his hands. "You are making a mistake." "I made the mistake years ago." Luca approached him. "I trusted you." Marco looked toward Madeline. "And now you trust a seamstress you met 4 months ago." Luca did not look at her. "More than I trust you." The words entered Madeline, chest like a blade. Marco laughed quietly. "Then you are already lost." One of the guards searched him. They found a small transmitter inside his watch. A red light blinked. Luca grabbed Madeline and pulled her behind the stone kitchen wall. The explosion came from the elevator. Metal doors tore inward. Smoke rolled into the penthouse. Gunmen emerged through the damaged opening. Luca's security team opened fire. Madeline crouched behind the wall while bullets struck stone around them. Luca pressed a weapon into her hand. "Do you know how to use it?" "No." "Keep it pointed away from yourself. That is your entire lesson. Survive long enough for a second lesson." He moved toward the smoke. Madeline grabbed his sleeve. "Luca." He looked back. "Do not leave me here." Something fierce entered his eyes. "Then stay behind me." They moved through the penthouse as glass shattered across the floor. Luca fired with terrifying precision. He never appeared hurried. Every movement was controlled. Madeline followed him toward the sewing room. A gunman appeared near the piano. Luca did not see him. Madeline caught the reflection of the weapon in the polished surface of her cutting table. Down. She pulled Luca's sleeve. The bullet passed above his shoulder. Luca turned and fired. The gunman fell behind the piano. Luca looked at Madeline. You saw him in the table? I see crooked lines for a living. Another explosion shook the building. They reached a private stairwell leading to the roof. A helicopter waited on the rooftop, helipad. Rain struck Madeline's face as Luca guided her across the open concrete. 3 black vehicles burned on the street far below. The city lights reflected in smoke. A shot came from a neighboring building. Luca turned and covered Madeline. His body jerked. They reached the helicopter. Inside, Madeline saw blood darkening the shoulder of his shirt. You were hit. It passed through the outer muscle. Sit down. I am fine. That is not a medical opinion. It is my shoulder. Madeline pushed him into the seat. She pressed folded fabric from the emergency kit against the wound. Luca watched her. Her hands no longer shook. You saved my life. You saved mine first. That does not create a debt. Good. I am tired of powerful men discussing debts. The helicopter lifted into the storm. Chicago became a field of lights beneath them. Luca looked at her hands pressing against his shoulder. Madeline looked at the rain running across the windows. Neither of them spoke. Their silence had changed. It no longer felt like suspicion. It felt like the beginning of something neither of them could control. The helicopter carried them to a safe house on the shore of Lake Michigan. The house stood alone behind iron gates and winter trees. Waves struck the dark shoreline. Armed guards surrounded the property. A doctor treated Luca's shoulder. Madeline waited in the corridor. When the doctor left, she entered the bedroom. Luca sat at the edge of the bed wearing a clean black shirt. His injured arm rested in a sling. You should sleep. He looked at her. You sound like someone who has forgotten she is supposed to fear me. I still fear you. Why did you come inside? Because fear is not the only thing I feel. The admission escaped before she could stop it. Luca's eyes locked onto hers. Madeline turned toward the window. The room contained an old wooden wardrobe. One door stood open. Inside hung several coats, protected beneath cloth covers. A dark wool coat had fallen to the floor during the rushed arrival. Madeline lifted it. The inner pocket was torn. Luca stood. Leave it. The force in his voice startled her. She placed the coat on the bed. Who did it belong to? He did not answer. Madeline saw the initials sewn inside. M. de Matteo de Santis. Your brother. Luca looked at the coat. He wore it the night he died. Madeline gently touched the torn lining. The fabric was stained by rain and years of storage. But the coat had been carefully preserved. You kept it. It was the last thing returned to me. Luca sat beside it. The cold mask slipped from his face. Not completely. Only enough for Madeline to see the grief beneath it. Matteo was 19 months younger. Luca spoke quietly. He believed people could be better than their worst decision. I believe people were exactly what their worst decision revealed. Which one of you was right? Neither. Luca looked toward the waves. He trusted Marco. I taught him to. You could not have known. I should have. Madeline sat beside him. Their shoulders almost touched. Luca stared at the coat. I sent Matteo to the harbor that night. He wanted to wait for more men. I told him fear made people careless. His voice became rough. He died because he listened to me. Madeline looked at him. He died because someone betrayed him. I created the opportunity. You have spent years punishing yourself because revenge feels easier than grief. His jaw tightened. Do not pretend you understand. I understand carrying responsibility that does not belong entirely to you. Luca looked at her. Madeline folded her hands. My father left when my mother became ill. I told myself that if I worked harder, earned more, and never disappointed anyone. I could keep our family from falling apart. Did you? No. The truth surprised her. I kept the shop open. I paid the bills. I did everything people called strong. My mother was still sick, and my father still left. She looked at the coat. Sometimes effort cannot save the thing we love. That does not mean we caused its destruction. Luca lifted his hand. His fingers touched the side of her face, where Vivienne had struck her. The contact was careful, almost reverent. Madeline stopped breathing. His thumb moved once across her skin. Then he pulled away. I warned you. About what? Touching something I cannot let go. His gaze lowered toward her mouth. Madeline felt the distance between them disappear. Luca leaned closer. A knock sounded at the door. He stood immediately. The moment shattered. One of his guards entered. Bianca Rinaldi had been found. She was alive and asking to speak with Madeline. Bianca arrived under heavy guard before sunrise. Her perfect hair was tangled. Her expensive coat was torn. Terror had erased every trace of arrogance from her face. She refused to speak in front of Luca. Madeline did not trust her, but agreed to enter a guarded room alone. Bianca looked at the cameras in each corner. He is listening. Probably. Bianca gripped her hands. Vivienne will kill me. Why did you cut the gown? I was searching for the ledger. The yellow papers. Only part of it. The full ledger contains names, payments, warehouse schedules, and proof that Vivienne arranged the harbor ambush. Madeline felt sick. Vivienne killed Matteo. She gave Marco the security route. She wanted the DeSantis family weakened before the marriage negotiations began. Why hide the ledger inside the gown? Vivienne's father kept it as protection. He knew his daughter would eventually betray him too. Bianca swallowed. He secretly placed it inside the gown during the second fitting. He planned to retrieve it at the wedding and trade it to Luca in exchange for safe passage out of the country. But you tried to take it first. Vivienne discovered his plan. She ordered me to find it. Bianca began crying. I cut the lining, but I could not find the compartment. When you repaired the gown, she realized you might have seen it. She slapped you because she was panicking. The shooter was supposed to kill you before you could speak. Madeline thought of Vivienne crouching behind the sofa. She had not been surprised by the gunfire. She had been waiting for it. Where is the rest of the ledger? Bianca shook her head. Vivienne's father divided it into sections. One part was hidden in the gown. Another is inside the abandoned St. Aurelia Church near the harbor. Why there? That is where Luca and Vivienne were supposed to rehearse the ceremony. Bianca looked toward the door. Vivienne plans to meet the heads of 3 families there tomorrow night. She will tell them Luca attacked her and broke the alliance for a lover. Then she will use the ledger to prove she controls Marco and the DeSantis warehouses. Madeline stood. Tell Luca. Bianca grabbed her wrist. There is more. Madeline waited. Bianca's face filled with shame. Luca knew the wedding might become violent. Madeline pulled her hand away. What do you mean? He placed surveillance in every fitting room at the mansion. He monitored everyone near the gown. That is reasonable. He also knew someone had accessed the gown before the final fitting. Madeline became still. Bianca continued. His men saw me enter the room that night. Luca allowed the fitting to continue because he wanted to see who came for the hidden evidence. The room seemed to tilt. He knew the gown had been damaged. Bianca nodded. He did not know you would remain there alone. He did not know Vivienne would strike you, but he knew something dangerous was happening around that dress. And he said nothing. Madeline left the room. Luca waited in the corridor. One look at her face told him what Bianca had revealed. Madeline walked past him. He followed her into the main room. Madeline, do not. She reached for her coat. Luca stood behind her. I knew Bianca entered the fitting room. You knew she damaged the gown. I knew she touched it. I did not know why. You could have warned me. If I had warned you, she would have realized we were watching. So, you let me remain inside a trap. I increased security. A shooter still reached the window. His expression changed. Madeline faced him. You watched Vivian humiliate me for months because confronting her might damage your investigation. I did not know the extent of it. You saw enough. Luca said nothing. Madeline's eyes burned. You chose your revenge. You made the same decision every time you remained silent. I was trying to expose the people who killed my brother, and I became acceptable risk. No, his denial came too quickly. You became the one risk I did not understand until it was too late. That does not make it better. I know. The quiet answer hurt more than an argument. Madeline took her coat. Unlock the gate. I cannot allow you to leave. Then nothing has changed. She looked at him. Vivian treated me as though I existed to serve her perfection. You treated me as though I existed inside your strategy. Luca's face became pale beneath a controlled mask. You are not part of a strategy anymore. What am I? His eyes held hers. The answer seemed trapped behind years of discipline. He could command men to kill. He could tear apart a political alliance without raising his voice. He could not tell one woman what she had become to him. Madeline nodded. That is what I thought. She walked toward the door. Luca did not stop her. He ordered 2 vehicles to follow at a distance and took every guard away from the gate. It was the first choice he had given her. It felt too late. Madeline returned to the guarded apartment where her mother and Sophia waited. She told them enough to explain the danger without revealing details that could place them at greater risk. Her mother listened quietly. When Madeline finished, Elena touched her cheek. Do you love him? Madeline looked away. I barely know him. That was not my question. He used me. Did he protect you? Yes. Did he frighten you? Yes. Did he listen when you told him the truth? Sometimes? Elena smiled sadly. Love does not make a dangerous man safe. It only makes his danger matter to you. Madeline sat beside her. I do not know whether he can change. Do not choose him because of who he might become. Elena took her hand. Choose only what he is willing to become through his own actions. That night, Madeline could not sleep. She opened the box containing Matteo's coat. She had brought it from the safe house without thinking. The damaged lining bothered her. Repairing it had felt like the only thing she could still control. She spread the coat across the table. As she removed the torn stitches, her needle struck something hard. A thin metal disc had been sewn beneath the pocket. Madeline opened the seam. Inside was a small storage device wrapped in waxed cloth. Matteo had hidden it before going to the harbor. The ledger inside the wedding gown was only part of his evidence. This device might contain everything. Madeline reached for her phone. The lights went out. Glass broke in the hallway. Sophia screamed. Madeline pushed the device into the lining of her own coat. The apartment door opened. Vivian entered with 3 armed men. She wore a white coat over a red dress. Her face was calm. The bruise on Madeline's cheek had faded. Vivian looked at the remaining shadow of it with satisfaction. You should have stayed invisible. Madeline stepped between her and the bedroom where her mother waited. What do you want? Vivian looked at the sewing table. My property. The ledger was never yours. Everything becomes mine when the right people are dead. Madeline heard vehicles approaching outside. Vivian smiled. Those are not Luca men. She lifted a gun. Tell me what you found inside Matteo's coat. Madeline said nothing. Vivian aimed toward the bedroom door. Your mother does not need to be part of this. Madeline's heart pounded. Let them leave, and I will take you to it. Vivian studied here. Then she motioned to one of the men. Sophia and Elena were dragged from the bedroom. Madeline's mother tried to reach her. Madeline forced herself not to move. Vivian leaned closer. Luca destroyed an alliance worth hundreds of millions because I slapped you. Her voice shook with hatred. Do you understand how humiliating that was? You did not lose him because of me. Madeline met her eyes. You lost him because he finally saw you clearly. Vivian struck her with the weapon. Madeline fell against the table. The men pulled her upright. Vivian smiled. Take her to the church. Release the others after we are gone. One of the men hesitated. Vivian turned the weapon toward him. Did you misunderstand me? He lowered his eyes. No. Madeline was forced into a black vehicle. As it moved through the rainy city, she pressed her thumb against the emergency button hidden inside Luca's jacket. She had tried to return the jacket at the safe house. Luca had told her to keep it. At the time, she believed it was another form of control. Now, she prayed he had meant protection. Luca found the ruined apartment 14 minutes later. Elena told him what happened. He saw the open box on the sewing table. Matteo's coat was gone. Luca understood immediately. Vivian believed Madeline had found the missing evidence. His captain began issuing orders. Luca stood in the center of the room without speaking. Every person around him sensed the violence building beneath his silence. Elena approached him. Bring my daughter home. Luca looked at her. I will. Do not promise me because you are powerful. Elena's voice remained steady. Promise me because you love her enough to choose her life over your revenge. Luca had never spoken the word aloud. Love had always seemed too fragile for his world. Men used it to excuse weakness. Families used it to demand sacrifice. Enemies used it to locate the softest place to strike. Madeline had become that place. He had watched her enter his mansion, carrying fabric heavier than she was willing to admit. He had watched her endure cruelty without allowing it to make her cruel. He had watched her challenge him when every man around him offered obedience. Somewhere between the first fitting and the storm above Chicago, she had become the only future he could imagine beyond revenge. Luca looked at Elena. I love her. Saying it did not weaken him. It gave his fear a name. Then bring her home as the woman she is. Elena held his gaze. Not as something you own. Luca nodded. The signal inside his jacket activated near the harbor. St. Aurelia Church had been abandoned for 15 years. Rain poured through holes in the roof. Broken stained glass covered the floor. The old altar stood beneath a damaged painting of angels. Vivian forced Madeline to kneel before the altar. Men from 3 rival families waited in the pews. Marco stood beside them. He had escaped during the penthouse attack. Vivian addressed the room. Luca DeSantis has become unstable. She gestured toward Madeline. He destroyed our alliance for this woman. He attacked my family and murdered my guards because she manipulated him. Madeline looked at the men. You know she is lying. Vivian smiled. They know power. Truth is less useful. Marco stepped forward. Where is the device? Madeline looked at him. Matteo trusted you. His face hardened. Matteo was weak. Luca made him weak by allowing him to believe loyalty was real. Madeline rose slowly. You betrayed him because you were jealous. Marco struck her across the face. The church doors opened. Wind drove rain through the entrance. Luca stood beneath the broken stone arch. His black coat was soaked. Blood marked one side of his shirt where his shoulder wound had reopened. Behind him, armed men filled the courtyard. Black SUVs surrounded the church. Vivian pressed her gun against Madeline's side. You came alone, Luca entered. His gaze remained fixed on Madeline. No. Vivian looked toward the doors. You cannot kill everyone here. Luca stopped halfway down the aisle. I did not come to kill everyone. His eyes moved to Marco. Only the people who made that necessary. Marco raised his weapon. Luca men entered from side doors. Every rival leader in the pews suddenly found a gun pointed toward him. Vivian pulled Madeline closer. Give me the harbor routes. And she lives. Luca looked at Madeline. Are you hurt? Vivian laughed. You are negotiating with me. Luca ignored her. Madeline answered. I am alive. Something broke inside his expression. Not weakness. Restraint. I should have warned you about the gown. His voice carried through the church. I should have stopped Vivian the first time. She treated you without respect. I should have trusted you before I trusted my revenge. Vivian pushed the gun harder against Madeline. This is not a confession. Luca continued looking at Madeline. I cannot undo what I allowed. He took one step closer. But I can tell you the truth before one of us loses the chance to hear it. Madeline's heart stopped. Luca's eyes held hers across the ruined aisle. I love you. The church became silent. Luca reached inside his coat. Vivian tightened her grip. Slowly. He removed a black ledger and placed it on the floor. The complete records from the Moreau warehouses. Vivian stared at it. How did you find that? Your father gave it to my men an hour ago. Luca's voice turned cold. He chose his life over protecting you. The rival leaders began murmuring. The ledger contained proof that Vivian had stolen from them, redirected their shipments, and planned to blame each family for attacks against the others. Her alliance collapsed in seconds. Vivian's face twisted. She fired toward Luca. Madeline moved. The bullet struck the stone column beside him. Luca's men opened fire. Chaos exploded through the church. Madeline drove her elbow backward and broke free. Vivian grabbed her hair. They fell against the altar. Marco aimed at Luca from behind a pew. Madeline saw his reflection in a piece of broken stained glass. Luca left. Luca turned as Marco fired. The shot missed. Luca fired once. Marco fell behind the pew. Vivian pulled Madeline toward the side of the altar. A heavy bridal canopy from an old ceremony hung above them, supported by rotting ropes. Madeline reached inside her sleeve. She had hidden a small pair of sewing scissors there before leaving the apartment. Vivian raised the gun again. Madeline cut the nearest rope. The canopy collapsed. White fabric fell over Vivian's head and trapped her arms. The gun slid across the floor. Madeline crawled away. Another man rushed toward her. Luca reached him first. The fight ended quickly. Luca crossed the remaining distance and dropped beside Madeline. His hands moved over her shoulders and face, searching for injuries. Look at me. She looked at him. Are you hurt? Not badly. He pulled her against him. The embrace was not controlled. It was desperate. His body shook once. Madeline felt his fear more clearly than she had ever felt his power. Vivian fought beneath the fallen canopy. She reached through the fabric and found the gun. Luca saw the movement too late. Vivian aimed at Madeline. Luca turned and placed himself between them. The shot echoed through the church. Luca fell against Madeline. His men fired. Vivian's weapon dropped. She did not rise again. Madeline lowered Luca to the stone floor. A dark stain spread beneath his ribs. No. Her voice broke. No. Luca. His hand found hers. You are alive. So are you. She pressed both hands against the wound. Stay awake. His eyes remained on her face. I gave you a choice. Too late. You can give me another one when you wake up. Madeline leaned over him. You can ask me what I want. You can listen to the answer. You can spend the rest of your life learning that protection is not the same as possession. His breathing became shallow. That sounds difficult. It is. His mouth moved with the faintest hint of a smile. Then I will survive. Sirens approached through the rain. Luca's fingers tightened around hers. Madeline remained beside him as armed men filled the abandoned church. The broken angels above the altar watched rain wash dust and blood from the stone. Luca survived the surgery. The bullet had missed his heart by less than an inch. Madeline sat outside his hospital room throughout the night. At sunrise, one of his guards approached. He carried a sealed envelope. Mr. DeSantis ordered me to give this to you if he survived. Madeline looked at him. If he survived, he said you would be angry if he used death to make you forgive him. That sounds like him. She opened the envelope. Inside was the deed to Crew's bridal alterations. The mortgage had been paid. A second document transferred control of the neighboring building to Madeline's mother. There was also a handwritten note. Madeline recognized Luca's precise lettering. No conditions. No debt. No ownership. Only the return of choices that danger took from you. She read the final line twice. When I wake, I will not ask you to stay. I will ask whether I have earned the right to stand beside you. Madeline entered his room. Luca lay beneath white sheets, surrounded by machines. Without his black suit and armed guards, he looked younger, still dangerous, still impossible, but human. She sat beside him, his eyes opened slowly. You stayed. For now. He looked toward the envelope in her hand. The shop is yours. It was already mine. Now the bank agrees. Madeline tried not to smile. You are not charming enough to avoid this conversation. I nearly died. That is not charming either. Luca watched her. What do you want? The question carried effort. Madeline understood how unfamiliar it was for him. I want my shop reopened. Done. She raised one eyebrow. Luca corrected himself. I will help if you ask. Better. She took his hand. I want my mother protected without being imprisoned. I will arrange guards, she chooses. I want no surveillance inside my home or business. Agreed. I want the truth. Even when you think the truth places me in danger. His jaw tightened. That will be difficult. I know. He looked at their joined hands. Anything else? Madeline leaned closer. I want time. Luca nodded. You have it. No argument. I am recovering from a gunshot. You argued with 3 surgeons this morning. They were inefficient. Madeline laughed. The sound filled the cold hospital room. Luca looked at her as though he had never heard anything more precious. 6 months passed. Crew's bridal reopened in a larger building with new windows, stronger locks, and the same wooden counter Madeline's mother had used for years. Madeline refused to replace it. Some things were valuable because they carried marks from the people who had loved them. The public scandal slowly changed. Evidence from the Moro ledger reached federal investigators through a lawyer Luca trusted. Several corrupt officials were arrested. Moro properties were seized. The rival families abandoned Vivienne before her funeral. Luca never spoke publicly about her. He did not need to. He changed quietly. He began asking before sending guards. He stopped purchasing solutions Madeline had not requested. He learned to knock on the locked rear door of her shop instead of entering through it with security. The first time he arrived without warning. Madeline made him wait while she finished pinning a bridesmaid dress. The most feared man in Chicago sat beneath a row of fabric samples for 40 minutes. 3 customers asked whether he was a model. Luca did not answer. Madeline enjoyed that more than she should have. He did not become gentle with the world. Men still feared him. Enemies still disappeared from his territory. His voice could silence a room. But with Madeline, his power changed shape. He listened. He remembered. He stood outside her apartment in the rain one night after an argument because she had told him not to enter. When Madeline finally opened the door, he was soaked. You could have waited in the car. You told me to leave the apartment. You did not tell me to leave the street. That is a terrible interpretation of boundaries. I am still learning. She let him inside. He never touched her without watching her face first. The restraint made every moment between them more intense. One winter evening, Madeline worked late in the shop. Snow covered the Chicago sidewalks. Luca entered carrying Matteo's repaired coat. Madeline had finished restoring it after the hospital. He wore it often now, not as a symbol of guilt, as a memory. Madeline looked up from her sewing machine. The shop is closed. I know. Then why are you here? Luca placed a small box on the counter. Madeline became still. He did not open it. I am not asking you to marry me tonight. She released the breath she had been holding. That is an unusual beginning. I am asking you to design one more dress. For whom? For yourself. Madeline looked at the box. Inside was a diamond ring set around a small blue stone shaped like the crystal she had found inside Vivienne's gown. Luca continued, "You once told Vivienne that you could wear anything you created. You remember that I remember everything you say to me." His voice lowered. "When you are ready, design the dress you want. Choose the place. Choose the date. Choose whether there are 10 guests or 1,000. If that day never comes, I will still be here." Madeline's eyes filled with tears. Luca did not kneel. He did not pressure her with an audience. He stood before her as a man offering the one thing that had once been impossible for him. Choice. Madeline closed the box. Luca's expression became unreadable. She walked around the counter and placed both hands against his coat. "You are not asking tonight." "No." "Good." She kissed him. His arms closed around her slowly, carefully. When she pulled back, his forehead rested against hers. "How much time do you need?" Madeline smiled. "You lasted almost 10 seconds before asking." "I am improving." 1 year after the canceled wedding, St. Aurelia Church opened its doors again. Madeline had spent months restoring it with local artists and craftspeople. The broken roof had been replaced with clear glass. Sunlight poured across the old stone floor. The damaged painting of angels remained above the altar. Madeline believed scars did not always need to be hidden. Sometimes they proved that destruction had not won. She walked down the aisle wearing a gown she had designed herself. It did not make her smaller. It did not hide her body beneath heavy fabric. Soft ivory silk followed every curve. Hand-sewn lace covered the sleeves. Blue crystals formed small flowers along the waist. Elena walked beside her. Sophia cried from the front row. There were no political leaders, no marriage contracts, no rival families waiting to measure the value of the alliance. Only people Madeline and Luca had chosen. Luca stood beneath the restored angels. He wore a black suit and Matteo coat. When he saw Madeline, all the cold control left his face. He looked at her as though the entire world had narrowed to one woman walking toward him. Madeline reached the altar. Luca held out his hand. She placed hers inside it. The priest asked whether they came freely. Luca looked at Madeline before answering. "Yes." Madeline smiled. "Yes." Outside, snow began falling over Chicago. Black vehicles waited along the street, but no weapons were visible. After the ceremony, Luca and Madeline remained inside the church while their guests moved toward the reception. Sunlight faded through the glass roof. Candles illuminated the altar where Luca had once nearly died. Madeline touched the scar beneath his jacket. "Do you regret canceling your first wedding?" Luca looked down at her. "I regret waiting until she struck you before I saw how much silence had cost." His hand moved gently along her waist. "I do not regret anything that brought me here." Madeline raised one eyebrow. "Being shot. Almost anything." She laughed. Luca watched her with the expression he showed nobody else. The dangerous obsession had not disappeared. It had become devotion. Not soft. Not simple. Earned. Madeline placed her head against his chest. His heart beat steadily beneath her ear. Beyond the church doors waited a city that still feared Luca DeSantis. Inside, he held the one woman who had never asked him to become harmless. She had only demanded that he become honest. Luca lowered his face toward hers. "You never answered one question." "Which one?" "The first night at the penthouse. You said powerful men always demand a price for protection." Madeline looked into his eyes. "I remember. What price did I demand?" She thought of the shop. The church. Matteo coat. The abandoned revenge. And the man who had learned to ask instead of command. The truth came easily. "You demanded nothing." Luca waited. Madeline smiled. That is why I finally chose to give you everything. He kissed her beneath the broken angels as snow fell beyond the windows. The first wedding had ended with a slap, shattered glass, and a torn contract. The second began with a choice, and for Luca DeSantis. The woman he had once protected from a bullet became the only person powerful enough to save him from the life he had believed he deserved.